Ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, conspiracy theorists, interdimensional philosophers, seekers of truth, and last, but certainly not least, all of you with confirmation bias, we'd like to welcome you to Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. Whether your interest is Atlantis, Zeus, or anything in between, we tackle it all as we sit tucked away in the ancient flood-battered Central Pangaean mountain range. We are a podcast dedicated to exploring the fringe with logic, unraveling the interdimensional and mythical matrix, and where we also theorize the fourth dimension exists and is the spiritual.
And here we're dedicated to pushing science, logic, and the Socratic method to their limits as we discuss the mysteries and mythologies of the world.
Only trigger warning for this episode, and I can say this with certainty as we've already recorded it, is a logical conversation. So if applying the Socratic method on fringe topics is disturbing to you, turn off the podcast now.
Alright, so today's fish fact, which on top of, I already told Josiah this one, on top of the hammerhead new species, we have a new ghost shark, which is a type of deep sea shark relative. New ghost shark, type of deep sea shark here. It is the Australasian narrow-nosed spookfish, the Heriata avia. So yeah, just new species discovered, that's all. And then today's episode, we've got, I think we did an intro spiel in the initial recording then, but we got Dave Spinks on.
Yep.
So we'll cut into that recording somewhere here.
Without further ado, please join us as we quantumly transcend time back to our interview with Dave Spinks right about now.
Alright, so we are here today with Dave Spinks. He is an accredited paranormal investigator. He's on shows such as Expedition X on Discovery Channel. He's also been on a few History Channel and travel TV shows as well. With some other projects that he's got up and coming that we'll plug in at the end of the show. So we found Dave here at the Mothman Festival, and he's agreed to sit down with us for a little interview here and get some stuff off his chest that he wants to let the world know about. So Dave, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure talking about this stuff. I could talk about this every day, all day. I spent over 30 years of my life investigating, researching, and writing books about all subjects of the paranormal / supernatural, various types of phenomena, and more. I'm also ex-military and retired federal law enforcement, and I've been doing this stuff since I was a kid because I had my own experiences, as a young man, more or less. I actually got my first EVPs when I was like 14, 15 years old because I had my own experiences, and then we would go on family vacations, and I happened to see the show In Search Of, and Hans Holzer was on there back in the day, and they were doing a paranormal investigation, and he happened to be using the same exact tape recorder I had just gotten for Christmas. See, we weren't like you youngsters in those days when we wanted to record music. We had to actually take a cassette player and hold it up to the radio when we heard our favorite song come on. That's how we would record music. So, we didn't have the luxury of the internet or anything like that back in those days. But yeah, and we went on that particular case. Me and my parents had went to a place called Mesa Verde in Colorado, where the Anastasi people up and just disappeared, and it was a whole tribe of people that they still do not know what happened to those people. And they were like rock dwellers, they call them. They built pueblos. But this in Mesa Verde, there's this ginormous rock cliff. It's massive. And they had built an entire Puebloan city underneath this rock cliff up there. And this particular time we had gone there, and I'd been there numerous times. But even as a kid, you could feel the vibe there. You can feel there's something going on here. And that particular time we went during the week, there was nobody there. It it was kind of in the off tourist season, and no park. We didn't see a soul there other than us.
Hmm.
And you can go there and climb down these big ladders they have into the and go down into the city and walk around, and it's really cool. And I had seen that show, so I took my tape recorder and I wanted to try to do EVPs because I saw them. I said, "Hey, I can do that," you know. So I kid you not, first time I ever tried it, went there. I actually recorded Native American chanting and
Wow.
and drumming.
Huh.
So there was nobody there, no other like no reenactments. It was just our family there. We saw no other people, and we were probably there 3 or 4 hours.
Hmm.
So I was just walking around, these ruins and asking questions, and I ended up getting Native American chanting and drumming out of thin air. My mom was really freaked out. She was like, "Don't be doing that stuff," But I was instantly hooked after that on doing that type of stuff. So ever since then, I've been seeking answers, looking for answers to the three of man's greatest questions. Are we alone in the universe? Are there unknown creatures among us? And what happens when we die? You know? And that's kind of my little mantra, like those three things. And that's why I have a passion for this. Will I ever find all those answers? Probably not, but it's fun. The journey going there and trying to do that is fascinating, especially when you get stuff like that you just can't fully explain whatsoever. And
Hmm.
that's what it's all about for me. And then I love sharing my experiences with people in my books, and interviewing people that have had similar experiences in my books as well, and sharing all that. And that's what it's about for me, because knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better off we are, and especially when it comes to the unknown mysteries of the universe. So I have a passion for it. Like I said, I told you guys before we got on here recording that I've turned down my own TV show a couple of times now with contracts in hand for lots and lots of money, but it's
Hmm.
not worth it to me to sell out and fake stuff, because that's not what it's about for me. I've
Yeah.
done plenty of stuff. I kind of made my name on YouTube, believe it or not. Way back in the day, I was like the second guy to ever live stream paranormal stuff on YouTube,
Oh
and
wow.
that's back in the day when they didn't have it on a cell phone like everybody does today. Can just hit go live and you go live. We had to run Cat 5 cable, hundreds of feet of it, with these little every so many feet. You had to run this booster thing to boost the signal to a laptop, and then we actually rigged a night vision camera to it with soldering and everything, and had it hooked to a hat so we could walk around, and that's what your viewpoint was.
That's cool.
So, and we learned that from a news guy that was in those big satellite trucks. He told us how to do it, and we did it. And it was crazy. And we had to lug all that cable, big rolls of it, and it was very expensive. And then you had to buy an air card back in those days, and it was super expensive to live stream stuff. And then as technology got a little bit better, we were able to start downsizing everything, and then it got better and better. And then I started doing TV, and then they had the whole YouTube Admageddon thing, and I bailed on YouTube because
Yeah.
somehow my first channel, and I had lots of views. Man, I don't know, I had like 40,000 subscribers and millions of views, and was making good money. That's how I was financing all these trips going all over the country.
Hmm.
And my channel just got taken down, disappeared one day.
Oh wow.
And I was really pissed. And YouTube, you can't get a hold of nobody from YouTube unless you're like
Yeah.
you've got the gold YouTube bar, or
Yeah.
whatever, and it's all automated. And it was really good before Google bought it, and then when Google bought it, everything went crazy,
Yeah.
Mm.
and lots of people lost everything on there. So I was already starting to do some TV by then and everything else, and I just bailed on it. And I just made two new channels, and I re-uploaded all my old live videos and other videos to it so people could just watch it whenever they want. So, it was fun at the time, and it actually helped me make my name, publicly, because when I was in law enforcement and military, I didn't tell people publicly this is what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right.
But people knew me. People knew me, friends and such. Hey, I know a guy that does that. Someone would have something weird going on in their house or whatever, and they say, "Hey, I know a guy that does that." And I'd get a phone call or an email, and then I'd go check it out. But that's really how I started in all this public side of it, and wrote my first book about the Bigfoot experience I had as a kid. That's what started me in all this, and it went crazy from there. Then the TV people started knocking, and they found out what else I did, and then more TV people. That's a small world, really, in the production world of Hollywood, because those producers and executive producers, they switch companies all the time. So they know they might be working on this show about Mothman, right? And hey, I know a guy that does that, so they get a hold of me or whatever the case. And then a lot of the location scouts knew me and actually watched me on YouTube, and they say, hey, they would give me an email, hey, you got any cool locations? We're looking for a location for this episode of this show, and then I'd get a call or whatever. So the way it works is really weird. It's a small world in the production world of Hollywood, and you become friends. And I was friends with John Zaffis and all these OGs, as we call them, from way back, doing stuff with them. And your name goes around in the circles like that, and then that's how you get phone calls and things happen for you.
No, that's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
cool.
awesome.
Let's hear a little bit about that Bigfoot experience, though, if you don't mind sharing that one.
Well, yeah. So my mom and dad were divorced when I was a little guy, and my mom was remarried to a guy that was in the Air Force. So we were stationed out west, like I said, and I would always come back here to West Virginia to be with my dad and both sets of my grandparents and all the rest of my family for visits and summers. And I would spend a lot of time with my grandfathers, both my grandfathers, hunting and fishing and whatnot. And me and my dad's dad were on one of our fishing trips here on what they call the Gauley River here in West Virginia. And it's a place we went to many, many times. We would camp out for a weekend usually and fish and have a good old time, cook our fish right there on a fire, eat them, just camp, fish, and have a good time. Well, this one particular summer, we were there in 1983. I was 13 years old. And we got there, got set up, started fishing, caught a whole bunch of fish. And Grandpa cleaned them, and we cooked them right there on the fire and ate them. And it was just after all that, it was getting towards dark now. We had a nice fire right on the river sitting there and just talking and carrying on. And out of nowhere, this ginormous splash hits out in the middle of the river. We don't see what causes it, but I mean, it was such a big splash that it rained down water. I would compare it to maybe like a guy doing a full grown man doing a cannonball off the diving board, in the swimming pool. It would just go woo and then rain down water. So we both jumped up because there's no other people out there. Where I live is fairly remote. You might see some people here and there fishing sometimes. Most time you don't. And on the other side of the river is sheer rock cliff. So if someone would be there and fall, they would get killed. It was real
Right.
nasty on that other side. So we're trying to figure out what caused this ginormous splash. We're looking around for good 3, 4, 5 minutes. Couldn't figure it out. We're thinking, well, maybe one of the tree branches fell, but we saw nothing floating, nothing. And so we sat back down at the fire there, and we were kind of scratching our heads, going, "Man, that was weird." We knew a fish couldn't make. There wasn't no fish that big in that river, that could do something like that. Well, as we're talking about that, we hear another noise coming off to our left, and out of my peripheral, I see something coming up through the trees, and you can hear it clipping the tree branches, and it's a rock about that big.
Oh,
I mean, it's a
jeez.
good sized rock, and it's coming up in an upward direction through the tree limbs. It comes out, hits in the water. Kaboom! Big old splash again.
Wow.
So we jump up and we're like, what in the heck? And now we know what caused the first splash. Obviously, it was a big rock, right? So my grandpa, mind you, been a preacher for 40 years, a Baptist minister. After World War II, he was a medic in World War II. He stormed the beaches at Normandy, second wave. So
Nice.
you can imagine what he been through. He went all the way to Germany, and so in his mind, I think he was thinking there was people messing with us that we couldn't see over there. So he yells out, "You hoodlums, knock it off, or I'm going to shoot." Well, as soon as he got done saying that, the most god awful howl, scream noise came from that side of the river. And I'm just like, what? I mean, it froze me I was scared to death. The sound of this was so deep and so guttural that I was just frozen in my shoes, man. I couldn't move. And I looked to see what he was doing, and he was gone. And I was like, "What?" And then I looked, and he's running toward the tent. So I was like, "Oh, he's going to get the gun." So we always carried a single shot shotgun for snakes on the river with us, right? So he comes back with the shotgun, and he said, "You." And meanwhile, the woods over there are there's something tearing down the woods and making this god awful noise, screaming and hollering. And he goes, "I told you hoodlums, knock it off, or I'm going to shoot." So he puts a round in there, and all we had was like bird shot because that's what we just used it for snakes and stuff. There's a lot of snakes on the river over there. So he caps off a couple rounds over there as fast as he could. Like it's a single shot. You shoot, you got to cock the barrel, take the shell out, put another shell, shoot again. And as he does that, then the thing over there goes just crazy, even more crazy. Starts screaming and hollering. Then 40 and 50, 60-foot sapling trees about that big around were shaking like toothpicks over there.
Oh man.
And still at this point, we don't know what's over there. I'm frozen. I can't move. Well, after he shot that, like I said, the thing went even crazier. And then he tells me, "Get to the truck, boy." And as I run to the truck, I mean, he's loading and shooting as fast as you can load and shoot a shotgun, a single shot, folding barrel shotgun, right? I get down by the front truck tire and I'm peeking around watching all this go on. And I'm just shaking. I mean, I am literally just freaked the hell out, like shaking in my boots. And as he keeps shooting, you can see the trees over there and the brush moving with whatever this thing is behind them because it's tearing down the woods as it's moving up and away from us. You can follow it, and at this point, we still haven't seen it yet. Well, after a little bit, it comes out into a clearing, and it's high grass, probably for a full-grown man up to your waist. So it's real high, grass and weeds and brush and stuff. But that's when I first saw it from the waist up. It was just a ginormous, looked like an ape type animal, but walking on two legs, covered in reddish hair, reddish brown hair with black streaks through the hair. And it was just huge muscles, man. I mean, you could see the muscle in this thing. And its shoulders were so wide that its head looked tiny, if that makes sense. Like its body was massive. And it was like, and my grandpa was like 6'4". He's a big man, and his his arms were as big as my legs. I mean, I seen him carry car block engines up on the porch when he was working on them and stuff. He was a really strong guy. Well, as I seen this thing, it never looked at me though. It was walking up and away from us at a pretty quick rate because my grandfather was shooting at it, shooting over there anyway. And he must have saw it at the exact same time I did because I'd looked towards him and he was running towards me. I never seen my grandfather run, like ever. So he picks me up with one arm, opens the truck driver's side door, and throws me into the truck cab. If the other door would have been open, I would have went completely through the truck cab because I slammed against it. He jumped in there and said, "That's not of God, son. We're getting out of here." And by this time, I've lost it. I'm crying. I got my head buried in my hands. And he cranks the truck up, jams it in the gear, and we're going out, up and out. Now, to get down into this river valley where we're at, it's like 3, 4, 5 miles of old logging road. It's rough. I mean, the truck's bottoming out. It sounds like pieces are coming off of it as we're getting out of there because he's got it floored. And off the one side, it's a giant cliff down in there's a big gullies and stuff. I'm like, "Oh my God, we're going to go off the cliff and die, and that creature's going to get us if we don't die." And, I'm scared to death. So after several minutes, we get back to the hard road and he's driving around and he's not saying a word. And I'm just sitting there boo-hooing, freaked out as all get out. And he finally pulls off the side of the road about 15, 20 minutes of driving around in circles, basically, because I think he's trying to process what just happened. So he pulls it off and he says, "We better not tell anyone about this, son, because they're going to think we're crazy." We left all of our tent, everything there. Everything was there still. And so we go home, and I guess he sent my uncle back out there to get it later, that night. But so we didn't talk about it for years. But at the same time, I was scared to death, and I wanted answers. I was like, "What was that?" I'd never heard of anything like that, other than the old timers around here would say, "Don't stay out after dark because the wood boogers will get you." Well, we always said,
Yeah.
we always said, well, they're just messing with us. They're messing with us, trying to scare us, so we don't stay out, and they have to go look for us to call us in for the night or whatever. Turns out, apparently, there's some truth to that. So, so I never said anything for years, but like I told you guys earlier, we didn't have the internet, so back in the day, we had to use the local libraries and the school library and stuff to research anything. And little by little, I started seeing magazine articles and different things where people saw the Yeti, and they were looking for these creatures, these undocumented creatures all over the world. And little did I know, it wasn't just here in the United States, but it was, like I said, it was all over the same similar creatures by a different name. And then you start looking more into it, you find out Native Americans have legends about these creatures as well. So I was like, okay. And then I saw the show In Search of again, and guess what was on there? A Bigfoot episode. And I was like, that's what I saw. I want more. I want more, And then I saw another show with Hans Hoser, like I told you. And it just, for me, it started kind of snowballing little at a time, And then I started getting my own little pieces of evidence, and I was, just snowballed into what it is today. So that's really what started me on all this. And still doing it, all these years later.
Did you ever go back to that spot to like see if you
Yeah.
could see any of the brush broken up?
Well, I'll tell you this. I grew up hunting and fishing. I didn't go in the woods for about 6 or 7 years after that. That's
I
how
don't blame you.
terrified I was. I
Yeah.
had nightmares about it. I almost had like PTSD from it. I had nightmares about it. Yeah, and when I first started going back in the woods, it was always when there was a bunch of people with us. It wasn't
Yep.
never. I mean, it took me quite a while. Of course, then I went. I was in college and stuff. And then I went in the military and spent 9 years in the military, and then I was in law enforcement. But I went back there for the same exact spot for the first time. Probably not for God. It'd been probably 15 years, 20 years before I went back to the same exact spot. Um, but I wanted to. That was kind of a challenge to myself to overcome that, and I did it. And I've been back many times since then, and made some pretty compelling recordings and interviewed people around the area that also were in the same general area as that, who claimed to have seen one, in there. And they one guy was related to us. He was like a distant cousin, or actually, see, he was my grandma's uncle, so he'd have been one of my great uncles, and I barely knew him. But he said he was in there cutting firewood one time, and he looked up, and there was stood a Bigfoot, and he flipped backwards on the log and almost cut his leg off with a chainsaw,
Oh,
and he hauled butt out of there. It was just a couple of miles away from where we were. So, over the years, I've had several reports come out of that area. So, I'm still active when I get a call or something. I head out and check it out, and see what we can find. But we have where I live now is right on the edge of what they call the Monongahela National Forest, which it's millions and millions of acres of very rugged, very sparsely populated area. It's a national park, and ton of crazy, weird encounters and sightings come out of that, out of the Mon, as we call it here. But and I've written about it, and there's lots more coming out about that stuff. But there's UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, the whole 9 yards out in there. So it's just one of those weird places that has all kind of weird stuff, ghost lights. I've seen some crazy stuff. And when I was younger, in my 20s, I used to go out there in the Mon, and I would actually camp in 5-10 miles and stay a whole week by myself. And then I would, over the years, I had some really crazy stuff happen, some recordings I've gotten, and different things like that. So,
wow.
you know, and and it's stuff that we've sent out to vocal experts, and it comes back as not known as any known creature, and different stuff like that. So, pretty crazy stuff.
So
Now we have. Sorry, go on.
what are you? I'll let you go first, and then I'll ask my question because I feel like mine's a bit more
Okay.
loaded.
Mine might be loaded too. So we have your first ghost experience. You have your first Bigfoot. Now, have you experienced like UFO stuff? Like, what's your first story in that aspect?
Okay, so I grew up on Air Force bases. My stepdad was in the Air Force, and I was in the Air Force. So I spent a lot of time. One of my jobs was walking around top secret aircraft with an M16, guarding them, right?
Oh wow.
So I've seen pretty much everything we've got that I know of. This was back, I got out of the Air Force in 2001. So I've been out for what, 23 years now. So, um, but like I said, I grew up on Air Force bases out west, and then I was in the Air Force out west, and then I was all over the world too. But um, I've seen some things in the sky. I can pretty much say there's no way it came from this planet. And oddly enough, never was it on an Air Force base that I saw these things. It was always off base. One time
Hmm.
I saw something I was at. So I played baseball in college, and I played some minor league pro ball too when I was much younger. But I kept playing in semi-pro leagues all the way when I was still in the Air Force. I played all the way into my 30s. I was still playing baseball because I just loved the game. And I was out in Arizona where I was stationed, and one of the guys from our team had a big barbecue at his house one night, and we all going over there. And him and his wife bought a brand new house in a brand new development. His was the first house, first people living in there, and it's out in the desert, man.
Hmm.
So we go out there, and he got a really nice backyard. We're grilling, drinking a couple beers, whatever, hanging out, just BSing. And then one of the guys goes, "What the frick is that?" And we all look. There's like 20 of us, and we see this pearlish white with a little bit of yellow hue to it, just a sphere hovering, probably,
Hmm.
I don't know, 8,000 feet in the air. And as we're all looking at it going, what the frick, and it was about probably the size of a Volkswagen, roughly, I'm just guesstimating here.
Hmm.
And then it's just hovering there. There's no sound, nothing. And then it comes down to about 2,000 feet. No sound, anything. You can't see any fumes, nothing that would be a combustible engine of anything. You don't hear any prop blades, anything. And it's low enough now that if it should have been making noise that we could have heard if it was something man made, right? So we're watching this thing going, what? And everybody's like, well, do you see that? Of course, back then, this was probably, what year was this? 95, 96. So cell phones were out there, but you had to have a lot of money to have one. You know what I mean? They were real expensive, and they didn't have all the cool features on them like you can take video and pictures back then. So we're just
Yeah.
all looking at this thing kind of in amazement. We probably watched it for 2 or 3 good minutes solid, and then the thing just went whoosh, straight up out of sight with not even a sound.
Huh.
And we're like, "Whoa, man, what the hell?" And it was gone. It shot straight into space and was gone in an instant. I mean, I've never, and anything that moves that fast would have created a sonic boom, 100%.
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
didn't hear a peep. A couple of guys got so wigged out they just left. Like half the guys were like, "I'm out of here, dude. That's crazy." And so that was one thing. And I've had several other things I've seen over the years that just blew my mind. I was like, "Whoa." I've had them here in West Virginia, out west. And normally, I usually, well, depending what book I'm writing at the time, I'll put my experiences in those books.
Hmm.
Depending what the book topic is and whatnot. But me and my mom and my little brother, me and my brother, even growing up before then, and I started. What was weird is I started remembering these things as I got older that I totally forgot about. Um, I had an experience with my little brother. Why my mom and my stepdad had gotten a divorce, and we moved just off the Air Force Base, Kirtland Air Force Base, which is a notorious base for UFOs and all kinds of stuff. And mom was managing this apartment complex, and we were living in one of the townhouses there. So it was like a 2-story townhouse, and me and my brother shared a room, and it had these big picture window in our room. And one night in the middle of the night, I woke up for no reason. I was probably maybe 10 or 11, somewhere around that age, and I heard this low humming noise, like a hmm.
Hmm.
And I woke up for no reason, went straight to the window and looked up. And normally in out west, if it's not cloudy, you're gonna see stars galore and everything. Couldn't see nothing. It was just pitch black.
Huh.
But I could see something moving over top of the house. And I'm like, what is this? So then I ran over there and woke my brother up. He was only like 6 at the time, 6, 7 at the most. I'm like, come and look at this. Come and look at this. And we're both looking out the window, And as you watch, you could see something pitch black moving. We couldn't tell what it was. Then we started seeing like structure, and it was really weird. Like you could see
Mm.
like different structure underneath whatever this was. And as it went farther away from the house, then the stars started opening up, and
Huh.
you could see one into the other, and it was a massive triangular ship. And as it went by, I swear to God, I know this sounds cliche, but it had three big giant engine looking ports on the back, and they were glowing a really lime green color. And it was just going right over. I mean, it was low too. I mean, it's like maybe 2, 3, 500 feet at the most.
Wow.
It went by, you could see the stars open up and you could see the wingspan, but it was not making any noise other than a very, very low hum.
Hmm.
And my brother still won't talk about it to this day because I'll bring it up. I said, "Remember what we saw that night?" And he's like, "We saw something, man, but I don't like that stuff. You freak me out with that stuff."
Hmm.
And yeah, so that was one, and I had several over the years, so like that.
So you brought up a great point that I want to talk about a little bit more, especially with your experience in the Air Force, that when jets start going a certain speed, you have that hypersonic, boom. And you
Hmm.
didn't hear that with this craft that you're describing in your previous story. I think that's an interesting detail because that definitely fixates that this is something beyond the equipment we're familiar with. So in all of your research into UFOs, what would you say this thing is to be able to not make a sonic boom?
Well, for me, to me, I don't think we have that technology unless we got it from extraterrestrial somehow. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, Now, now, I'm not ruling out it's some black project military that we don't know about, but because they were building the stealth bombers and fighters, some of our highest technology still to this day, back in the '60s and '70s. So it's hard to tell what we have now, that's so super uber secret that they haven't even let it out publicly to this day.
Hmm.
So, and that was back in the '90s when I saw that. So, it's hard to tell, man. I mean, if you subscribe to the whole Roswell theory and all these other things that insider whistleblowers said, yeah, we've captured numerous down spacecraft from other planets and reverse engineered some of that technology. Then a lot of people theorize that when we had night vision and during the Vietnam War, when the first scopes in night vision, they call them starlight scopes that the snipers were using. They said they reverse engineered that from off of the eye lens of some sort of extraterrestrial, like a little gray.
Oh
Hmm.
But
wow.
they wear those. They're not their eyes. That's why their eyes look black, but they're actually some sort of lens that gives them night vision capability. So
Hmm.
they say that they first engineered that and were able to create night vision
Wow.
scopes and
Hmm.
what we have today. Also, almost overnight after Roswell, if you look at the history of it, technology advanced 100 years almost overnight when it comes to
Hmm.
certain things like fiber optics and computer chips and everything else. So they theorize, people say that that's where that technology came from.
Hmm.
So if that's true, then the sky's the limit, as far as us being able to manufacture something that can travel at those speeds without any kind of noise or any kind of combustible engine. But you can imagine what the cost of that would be to reverse engineer something like that and try to um, just copy their technology, which is, if it all in fact is true, it's millions of years, or at least thousands of years in advance of ours.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you'll never hear me say I know for a fact this is, that's what that is and that's what that is, because if I did, I'd be lying.
Hmm.
There are no experts in the paranormal realm, so to speak, or supernatural. People like to give titles to things, but there are no experts. I like to, when I investigate, I use basically what the whole formula we use when we write police reports, who, what, where, when, why, and how. Make up and a lot of it's circumstantial evidence, but could be used in a court of law, like eyewitness testimony and other things like that. So, I always try to tell people, look, this is where I was, this is what I was doing, this is what I got. Make up your own mind, because I can't tell you, okay, 100% I know what a Bigfoot is. No, I don't. I don't know if it's an ET. I don't know if it's the missing link between man and ape. I don't know if it's interdimensional creature, extra dimensional, a ghost of a long dead extinct ape species. I don't know, man. I want to know. That's why I do this. But
Yeah.
if I told you I knew it was this and that, I'd be lying, because nobody knows, you know. And I try to tell people, be very careful when you watch these shows, because a lot of it is entertainment based. You know, they want to, like, you know, they've even messed up some of the shows I've been on when I'm telling my whole encounter, what I experienced, and they get it in the wrong order, and they freaking add stuff that didn't happen. It really pisses me off. I was really naive to the whole TV world when I did my first TV show. I told that Bigfoot story on a show called Terror in the Woods, and it's on two shows. It's on Terror in the Woods and These Woods Are Haunted. And once I saw the show went like everybody else did. Once it was filmed and done, I saw it just like the whole world did when they released it. I didn't know what they did with it, and then when I saw it, I was like, overall, they did a pretty good job. But they added this, didn't happen this, and so I was forced, because of my reputation. I'll go to conference and say, who saw this show with when I told them my story, and about 3/4 or more of hands usually go up. Oh yeah, I love that show, this and that. And I said, well, remember this part and this part and this part, and they're like, yeah, yeah. So that never happened, and people are like, what? What do you mean it never happened? I said, I'm here to tell you, this is Hollywood for you. And, if you want the whole and true real story, read my book. I said, this is what Hollywood does. They manufacture stuff. They add things that don't happen, because in their minds, they want to make it more scary when they didn't make it more scary. It changed my life. It was scared the living hell out of me.
Yeah.
And I was really upset about that. And then, once I learned, okay, you read that fine print in those contracts you sign, and it says, once you sign the contract, we reserve the right to add or change or anything to do with your story. And I'm like, that's bullcrap, man.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do, though? I wanted to share that, because I always get that. And I've literally done thousands of podcasts with folks and radio shows, coast to coast. All the whole plethora of them. And I always tell folks, to watch out for these shows, because it's like a double-edged sword. TV and radio and stuff are great for the paranormal in general. It made it pop culture as it is today, but it's a double-edged sword, because they also manufacture stuff and lie and fake stuff, and that's bad. That's bad for the paranormal, because a lot of us are boots on the ground, when we spend our entire lives trying to show people, hey, there's stuff around us we don't understand, and it's real, man. It's out there. So, but when you got people faking stuff, we have to work even harder to try to prove to folks and show people, hey, this is this, and this is, look what happened here.
Oh yeah.
And how do you explain that, And the real people that, I always tell them, if you want to know the real people versus the TV people, you look at their body of work before they were ever on TV. If they have a body of work, like have written books, have been talking about this, have a podcast, or have a radio show, or have written a blog way before they were ever on TV, then they've done some real work, beforehand. So look at their body of work. Most of the people you see on TV are nothing but actors.
Yeah.
Seriously. They're people that copy guys like me, and women like, other people, and folks that have been doing this for real for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So, and in the old days, TV was a lot more truer, and it's stuff they actually would have people on these shows that already had a body of work, like Hans Holzer and so many other people that were actively doing this stuff before they ever got on TV.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of fakes out there. We were talking about that one of our previous episodes from your Gettysburg tour experience, Trace, with the ghost tour, and how they were faking all sorts of stuff and all of that. It really just takes away from any potential like credible research there, and it just makes that whole field look like fake. So no, I agree with what you're saying.
People like to
It's
focus in on
unfortunate.
people like to focus in on like, oh well, this was debunked, so the rest of it must be a hoax too. It's like, well, no, you see thousands and thousands of reports of this stuff, and you have to think like, well, something has to be happening here.
Yeah.
Like, there at least has to be some that's real.
Right. There, like if you ever guys ever get a chance to read my Bigfoot book, like in that book, I mean, I've taken reports from school teachers, doctors, lawyers,
Mm.
police officers, uh, DNR guys, everything. That these are people that have a reputation. They're not just going to, they have nothing to gain by telling their experience. I mean, literally, it's actually a
Yeah.
negative,
Yeah.
construed as a negative on them. Depending what their career field and their job is, when I
Mhm.
first started doing this, you couldn't talk about this stuff in the public. You'd be ridiculed. You'd be, people would say, "Oh, he's crazy. He's on drugs, whatever."
Mm.
And these are most of the time people that are doing this have had some sort of experience that they want answers for, and then it starts them on this journey where they're looking for answers, or they're simply a scientist and they want to know more and they're trying to document these things. So or a combination of both. So
Mm.
and then you have these people. You wouldn't believe when I had my store here in town. I had a store for a couple of years called Dave Spinks Floral Weird, and you would be surprised that almost weekly or sometimes multiple times a week, I'd have some person come in and say, "Hey, I want to share something with you, and I know this is a safe place because I had this experience 35 years ago, and I want to get it off my chest because
Mm.
I tried to tell my
Wow.
family and stuff, and they made fun of me, and they did this, said I was nuts, and everything else. But I feel like I can tell you." I said, "Yeah, let me have it, let me hear it, man." And it was like this huge relief, this weight came off of these people because they've been holding this stuff in for all these years, and they were able to share it with someone who had a similar experience than they did, or would understand where they're coming from, And these are genuine people that really have nothing to gain at all. They just wanted to
Yeah.
share their experience with someone. And I really relish that because I know I helped that person too by letting them,
Mm.
spew that and get it off their chest because they've been holding this in. And it really bothers people. They have a life changing experience like that, and they can't tell nobody.
Yeah.
So yeah, are there crazy people? Sure. Are some of these people had an experience? Maybe they had a little bit too much of this or whatever, or other party favors. You know what I'm saying? So sure, yeah, that sometimes if you partake in certain things, you're probably going to have a crazy experience. Not to say that it's real, but that doesn't mean you didn't have a real experience either, just because you might have had a few beers or smoked a J-Bo or something. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that takes away some of the credibility. But if you're honest, say, yeah, man, I had 3 or 4 beers and we were camping and we saw this. That's not going to take your credibility away from me, unless you're stumbling, bumbling, just wasted, So, um, you have to take all that into account as an investigator. I put people through a pretty lengthy interview process when I get
Mm.
a email or a phone call. I'll ask them the same question 5 different times in different ways to see if I can trip them up, see if they're
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
so. And I've been fooled too. I'm a human.
Mm.
I'll give you an example of that. So this lady called me, said she had weird stuff going on at her house, right? Stuff moving, flying across the room. And I interviewed her through my normal process, and I felt she was legit. So I show up to her house on the agreed upon time and date. I told her what I needed. No people there, no animals. Let me go in, do my thing, and see what I can get. Maybe try to debunk anything I can debunk. Well, I get there, there's like 20 cars in the driveway. I'm like,
Mm.
what the heck's going on here? So I go into the house, and she's got like 20 people over there. They're drinking wine and eating cheese and having fun. I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're like, well, we're going to watch you investigate. I said, no, you're not. I said, I told you the requirements. I said, I'm out of here.
Mm.
Unless you get all these people to leave right now, I'm out of here. This is not a dog and pony show. I do this for real. You're not going
Mhm.
to sit here and I'm not going to be your entertainment for the night.
Right.
It's just not how I do stuff. And she got really I said, look, I came here. I spent $100 out of my pocket for gas money to come to help you, and
Mm-hmm.
you're pulling this crap. So you'll deal with that sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's very frustrating, but I had a lot of that go on. I've done commercial locations, people's homes, their businesses, the whole 9 yards. And I actually quit doing home residences for a while because of stuff like that. Because once I found out, once I got on TV that people were trying to bullcrap you and get you to their house because in their mind you're some kind of TV star or something. They want you to come to. I had Dave Spinks in my house, and then they're having a party. They're having a party there. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? So, you'll run into that sometimes. So it's just the nature of the game. But people don't realize, I couldn't even add up all the money I've spent out of my own pocket, going to locations for all these years. And, in some cases, pretty much all the time you get a hotel, you got to eat food, you got gas expenses and equipment expenses. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars, doing this stuff. And, just because it's like a hobby gone insane for me, really, literally. But it makes it all worthwhile when you get those little golden opportunities and get a really good piece of evidence, and you're able to help people too. That's what it's about for me. I love the history of these old places, the history of these locations, and I get to help people on occasion. When they're experiencing something very negative on occasion. So.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you that there's, people kind of tend to dismiss all this stuff in general as being like, oh, hey, everyone just gets rich off of this thing when they share stuff. And it's like, well, no, actually, it's usually the opposite. I actually have an acquaintance that had a big couple things that were like Bigfoot related that they experienced, and they're not really wanting to, make it public at all because of, just the ridicule of that and everything. So, no, that's definitely a fair concern. Yeah.
Still happens to this day. People ridicule. I laughed with some of my counterparts like big time. We had a big kick out of it because I had already written a book called Real West Virginia UFOs that I spent a lot of years gathering some of the best reports and sightings and interviews and my experiences over the years investigating right here in West Virginia. And that book, people love it and they buy it all the time, but when the government came out and started showing the Tic Tac videos, and you get ridiculed and stuff. And I said, oh, there's some validation, huh? We're all crazy because we're writing about UFOs. But now the government's coming out showing these videos of the Tic Tacs that they can't explain what it is, and it's flying in our airspace, and then they pull it back a little bit, and then they show a little more, and they show other things, and more and more coming out, drip feeding us this stuff. There's something going on here, which I already knew there was. There's a lot to it. But so we were laughing about it, saying, "Oh, we're not so crazy now, are we?"
Yeah.
Because we're, I mean, that's just how it is. So that's why I said like TV's a double-edged sword because it made it to where it's widely more accepted to talk about these things now. If you live in some of the Bible Belt areas in the country, they still don't like to mess with it. It freaks them out. But I try to tell those folks, I've gotten some really heated debates with, like I said, my papaw was a Baptist minister. So, and I love when church going folks tell me, oh, that stuff's not real. I said, what are you talking about? And listen to this, you'll love this. I said, okay. And I'll get into these debates with them. I said, okay, I got to ask you a question. You go to church every Sunday, right? You're hardcore, this and that, Bible, Jesus, God. I believe in all that. I said, what's the greatest ghost story ever told? And they're like, they kind of get taken back. They're like, what do you mean? I said, what's the greatest ghost story ever told? And they're thinking they can't think of it. I was like, come on, man. You're there every Sunday. And they're like, the resurrection of Jesus? I said, bingo. The resurrection, the Holy Ghost. It's right there. I said, it talks about all this stuff in the Bible. And then they're just like, their minds scrambled at this point. They're like, what? Wait a minute. I'm like, no. I said, you believe in God, right? And Jesus and the Holy Ghost. Yeah. 100%. I'm all in. I said, have you ever seen him? No. I said, come on, man, use your brain here. And I said, you ever read the book of Ezekiel? A little bit here and there. I said, one of the best stories in Book of Ezekiel is a fiery metal wheel that came out of the ground and flew off in the sky. So what do you think that is?
Yeah.
I said, it's a UFO, dude.
Sounds like a UFO to me. I've actually made that same connection before.
Right. And it talks about the Nephilim, the giants that roam the earth in the Bible. Who's to say that's not some branch of a Bigfoot or whatever. You know, I mean, come
Yeah.
on, use your brain. I said the Bible is 100% about supernatural and paranormal stories, man.
Yeah, it is.
It
You
is.
are hitting our core values here. That's kind of where we're coming
Right.
from on this
So,
podcast.
yeah, so that's, for me, I'm like, look, guys, just because they don't preach about that stuff because it's kind of off the beaten path, right? But it's
Yeah.
all in there, man. It's all in the Bible. The Bible's one of the oldest books, but it's also been changed by man many times, So, and that's why we have all these different branches of religion and whatnot. I said, but in almost all the major religions of the world, it has these type of stories in it, and you have to use an open mind. Just because they don't preach about the fiery metal will that came out of the ground, it's in the Bible. It's in there, dude.
Mm-hmm.
If
Hmm.
you believe in all that, then you got to believe in that. And who's to say God, Almighty God, didn't create other intelligent races of beings on other planets? You don't know,
Yeah.
you know. So, you kind of reach people like that, and say, hey, just have an open mind, man. Just because you see something you don't understand, and doesn't mean it's a demon either,
Yeah.
Mm.
it's just not. It doesn't work like that. So you educate yourselves,
Yeah, no, I agree. Man, Dave, I feel like we could go for probably another 3 hours here and still not scratch the surface
Oh
of this
yeah,
topic, but we do need
oh
to
yeah.
wrap up here. Trace, you got any
Right
final
on.
thoughts or questions you want to shoot Dave's way before we close out?
I will say, I did get your one book that you mentioned here, the West
Oh, there you
Virginia
go.
UFOs there. So eventually we're going to dive into that and some of the stories there, and
Yeah,
uh,
that book's
definitely.
mainly about all West Virginia, mainly, and it talks about how West Virginia has some of the most prolific and sightings and encounters in modern ufology, leading up to the fact that they built the Green Bank Observatory right here to what? Search for ET signals, man. I mean, right after the Flatwoods Monster incident. So it's in
Hmm.
your face right there. So check it out and please leave me a review on that.
Oh, definitely will. Definitely will. We'll have to keep in touch about all this stuff, and yeah, I want to thank you again for coming on with us. Eventually, later down the line, we'd love to have you back if you'd
Oh, yeah,
if you'd want to come back.
absolutely.
And
Just let me know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Dave. Appreciate it.
Yeah, just check out all my stuff on my website and all that. And if you want to see where I'm speaking at next, my schedule usually updates in the beginning of every year and updates throughout the year. Sometimes I get added to events later on in the year. It just depends. But I speak around around the whole country. Like different events, paranormal stuff, and you can see how to get my books. What new books are coming out soon on my website? Everything's on my website. So and we also take people with us we have what we call ethereal excursions, where you can buy tickets and come to a haunted location with us and get to investigate with me and my better half, Jen. We do a lot of stuff around different haunted locations around the country. You can kind of see how we do things and what equipment I use and my methodology. And I do, try to teach people, hey, this is how I do it. You can watch me, emulate me, and then learn your own way of doing it,
Mm.
however you see fit. But there's no wrong or right way to do this stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so I'll put Dave Spinks' website in the show notes. He's written about 8 books. They're all available on Amazon. And then I'll put any other information stuff as well that you send me in the show notes as well. So for those of our listeners, just hop down there and you'll be able to find all the info on Dave that your heart desires. And if that doesn't
Oh yeah,
answer it, Google.
let me plug a haunting we will go real quick.
Okay.
So coming soon from Christopher Garantano from Strange World on Travel Channel and Dark Files, also creator of the Montauk Chronicle movie. New show, a paranormal documentary coming out called A Haunting We Will Go in the next few months. So it'll be on worldwide streaming, 25 streaming platforms at least. Plus, it'll be on Discovery UK, Italy, Canada, and a whole bunch more. So look for that. I'm a main player in that one, and along with him and Jen and some other great folks in the paranormal. So super excited about that, and we have several upcoming projects with him. So make sure you check that out when it comes out.
Sounds good. Well, thank you much, Dave. Glad we could get you on the show. Definitely look forward to having you on again.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks a lot.
Have a good
Thank you.
night. Well, I think that was a pretty good interview, Trace. What would you say?
I really liked it. I definitely have a lot more questions. Would have loved to hit more points, but we were kind of running out of time there at the end. Would love
Yeah,
to get them on again eventually and dive a little more deeper.
definitely. I think there's a lot to still explore in that topic field with Dave. So I definitely want to have him on again in the near future. But no, that was a good all around discussion. The Bigfoot story is wild, and then UFO experiences. So kind of all over the place, and that's kind of what you see, like we talked about, when you pull this one cryptid thread, if you will, then everything else kind of gets plucked as well. That being said, follow ups. Let's see. Oh, I have a couple here. Well, one thing, Trace, is that I wanted to tell you that there's two types of people. I want to figure out which one you are. You ready?
Okay.
Those that can extrapolate from limited information. Anyway, so we'll continue on here. If you got it, good for you. If not, yeah, I guess you're out of luck. So I'm not explaining it. Yeah, so we had Dave Spinks on. That was a great episode. I should also say that I'm recovering from a concussion, technically. I guess I'm technically recovered at this point, but there was an interesting synchronicity I wanted to hit on real quick there. So I was out running in the woods the day before I had a tree branch fall on my head, and I saw a dead fox under an already fallen tree, which I thought was kind of bizarre. Like the tree had already been down for some time, and the fox was laying there. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird, and it's just a dead fox. I'm like, that's kind of sad, but it is what it is. And then I went to work, and I had a tree branch knock down a couple brain cells out of my brain. And then I go and get seen by a doctor, and guess what the doctor's last name was, Trace?
It was Fox.
It was Fox. I don't know what to do with that information. You think that I pissed off the Fae somehow, the Fae folk in the woods.
That's what I said. I said, because your house is kind of in the woods, on top of a mountain. So I said that the Fae heard us talking about, like, oh, we need to go and get more experiences with the Fae. So that was them giving you an experience. And I told you, it's like, hey, you need to go back out there and, like, give them an offering of thanks. And then the next day, you get whacked in the head with a tree. So that's all I'm saying.
But you asked for the experiences. I already have experiences. It's not my fault you're behind the curve.
Hey, it happens.
I guess. I don't know. Well, Trace, hit us with your creature fact quick, and let's wrap up the show.
All right. So, I'm just gonna. This is not really a supernatural one, but it's still like cryptid, as cryptids are just the search of animals that we've either lost or haven't discovered yet. So this one comes from the Appalachian Mountain Ranges, and it's called the AU, the AYEW. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But it's basically just a Black Panther, but in areas that Black Panthers shouldn't be in.
Like what areas?
It's a simple one. Just like West Virginia and stuff. Like there shouldn't be Black Panthers there. Or like I know in like Europe they have like black cat sightings, so it's pretty much the same thing. It's just it's a black like shadow cat is what it's called, but it's just Black Panther.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. Yeah, I didn't know about this at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pretty big fan of cats, so.
I mean, yeah, you did write a whole book about him, pretty much.
I did indeed. And that's also available on Amazon. I guess I'll put a plug in for my own book here. So. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I've never heard about a black cat cryptid before. That's definitely something new.
I mean, it's one of the more feasible ones, so I don't think it's as like put on as high of a pedestal as like, ooh, mysterious weird creature, because it's just a black mountain lion.
Yeah, it could just be a melanistic like cougar.
Yeah, that's really all it is.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be something like full on fringe off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
But yeah, well, I think we'll wrap the show here because we're just about in an hour or so. You can get a hold of us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com, or you can send us all your confessions, concessions, contentions, snide remarks. You can find us on Instagram at m.quad.musings. And apparently I've not been enunciating enough that you can also find us, Harry, on TikTok at m.quad.musings. One of our listeners is listened to every single episode up until this point.
Biggest fan.
Yeah, biggest fan has apparently missed that we have a TikTok. I don't know how, because I've enunciated it every single episode, but it is what it is. So I told him, I'm going to give you crap for that on the next episode we record. So alas, here we are. Sorry, Harry. I'm calling you out on this one. We're on Facebook, Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix. And whether you've been listening on the earth, above the earth, or below the earth, we thank you for tuning in on this fine Bigfoot UFO evening and ride that Dave Spinks took us on. And we ask that you have a good rest of your evening.
Toodles.
I was wondering if you were going to do it. All right, there we go. Toodles.